We need to talk about Viktor Orban, the prime minister from Hungary, because last night, once again, he stated that Ukraine should not be a member of the EU, but instead a partner. And while that's not the idea here, the idea that Ukraine becomes a part of the EU after the war is over, Viktor Orban's main reason why is that Ukraine should be a buffer zone between Europe and Russia, adding that Ukraine's fate today is that it is a buffer state neighboring Russia. It is not a fate we're willing to take on. The Hungarians have only just escaped from that. We too were a buffer state during the Cold War. We're not part of the Soviet Union, but we were located on the western edge, on the eastern edge of the Western world. We were a buffer zone. We don't want to return to that position. Let's go ahead and debate some of the things that he said here, because he loves to spread out misinformation or tries to paint Ukraine in a way so that they look bad when it doesn't really make any sense. First is, the EU is not a military alliance, meaning that if Ukraine was a part of the EU and they got attacked, it doesn't mean that all the other countries have to turn around and attack the person who attacked them. That would be like an Article 9 thing in NATO. Even then, there's a lot of gray. Next, this whole buffer zone thing is such a Cold War mindset that doesn't exist anymore. Because if you really want to go back to the Cold War and talk about buffer states, well, let's talk about Poland, the Baltics, Slovakia, Hungary itself. You're all part of the EU. Remember, Ukraine isn't trying to be a buffer state. They want to be a part of the family. So knock that out of your head. And then he talks about if Ukraine joins, there's going to be instability inside of the EU. And that's not true. Over the past few decades, we've seen countries that were having issues join the EU and become more stable. And when another one becomes more stable, it helps the countries around them. And I mean, look at countries like Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. They are doing great now because they joined the EU. When you join the EU, you actually have to change your laws so they can be more unified with the EU. And in doing so, you get rid of corruption, you fix issues in the democratic society that you're in, and it overall becomes a better thing for Europe. The issue we run into is that Orban is pro-Russia, and because of that, he always makes these anti-Ukraine comments, even has posters and even radio messages and commercials online trying to convince his people that having Ukraine added in is the wrong thing to do.